Hello, my name is Penny and I was diagnosed with breast cancer 2 weeks before the first official UK lockdown. I was under 50 at the time, so this wasn't picked up on a mammogram. About 16 months before, I was an end-of-life carer to someone in his final weeks of life that I loved very dearly, and unfortunately he passed away with this insidious disease. I saw the brutality of it, I saw the pain of it, and I saw what it could do. So when I got my own diagnosis some 16 months or so later, there was no one more shocked than me. I couldn't believe it. I went to work and I sat back on the chair at the end of the day and I felt something kind of pull, and I felt like I just needed to get my bra off. I felt a twinge underneath, and I remember saying to someone, I just need to get my bra off when I get home. A work colleague of mine had said that I'd said the week before I felt tired, but I don't remember saying this. But apart from that, it was winter, you know, we all feel tired during that time of year. I didn't think anything of it. I drove home and I know the exact part of the road, and when I drive by that now, it always makes me think of when I felt that pain, that sort of sharp stabbing pain. I got in the door, I took my top off and I just run my hand down the side and I said a swear word. I won't say it on here because I don't think I'm allowed to swear, but I'll let you imagine of what it was. And then after that, I've got cancer. I didn't cry, I was very calm in fact. I calmly walked down the stairs and I rang the doctor, and it was at the end of the day, and she said to me, well, we've got a cancellation just come in for tomorrow. And I said, yep, brilliant, I'll take that. And I just said to her, I've just found a lump and I think I've got cancer. So the following day I went to the doctors. I don't really remember, again, too much about that. I do remember being told, I'll refer you to the breast clinic. And my head was just, sorry, what did you say? And then you go on a 2-week wait for that. And that was when the roller coaster began. I don't really remember an awful lot about all of that. You've just got no control over your life whatsoever, and you just take your mind to of thinking, oh my gosh, what is going to happen? What is this? Then I was called back to the breast care unit in Milton Keynes. At that time, I was allowed to take someone in with me. So my friend came with me. Various nurses in one of the little rooms kept coming in. Another nurse had come in and I was lying on the bed, and it felt like if I'd been lying on this bed forever. And I remember just wanting to just get out of this room. My legs were shaking and I'd had enough, and they kept poking in needles, poking in another needle, looking at the screen. I was then taken out the back and I was told to go home and to prepare myself because they'd found something sinister. I had no idea what I was preparing myself for, and I felt like as if I was literally on the start of a roller coaster. I hadn't even got a safety harness on. I didn't even know how high I was going to go, how quick the turns and the drop of the roller coaster was going to be at this particular moment. But I was on that roller coaster for sure. I then was called back for the results, and in that time I hadn't told my parents. My mum was looking after my dad, and my dad's dementia was slowly declining then. I didn't want to upset anyone, so I didn't say anything until I knew for sure, even though in my mind I knew. When I was called back to the hospital, I do remember this part. I remember exactly what lipstick I had on, I remember what top, and because I felt I had no control, I thought, well, I'm going to get to that door first and I'm going to tell you. I know what this is. So I waited outside the door and she called me in and I said, I know what you're going to tell me. You're going to tell me I've got cancer. And she calmly said, yes, we are, Penny. And then I don't really remember anything else. Thankfully, my friend was with me and she was able to take notes when they were discussing of what my treatment plan would be. Once you hear those words, you don't hear anything else. The brain just... I went home and then I waited until I was told what would be my treatment plan. So I was told that I would have chemotherapy first. I'd have 2 different types of chemotherapy, and then I would have surgery, and then I would have radiotherapy. I was told I'd lose my hair. I was told I'd probably be isolating for about a year. I was grateful in many ways, and that message continues throughout my story with this, really. I knew that I would have to isolate alone for 12 months, so I got my head around that pretty quick. I thought, I've got to just write this year off, that this isn't in my control, but I'll control what I can control. And I think that comes with a mixture of grief and also a traumatic, diagnosis of something. A person will take what control they can. So when I started chemotherapy, I made sure that I exercised every day. Every single day. I run pretty much every other. I didn't stop. Sit-ups, push-ups, press-ups. I just kept going. I just treated it like it was an inconvenience to me. I kept a food diary, and again, that was my control. So I'd have a big planner on the wall. I used to mark off every day of what I had, what exercise I'd done. I used to I'd come up to the hospital on a Friday for chemo. They'd do my bloods on the Thursday to make sure that my blood levels were okay to have the chemo, and if they weren't, then they've then got to put it back. So every time that I'd have to have my bloods done, there was a little bit of, I hope it's going to be okay, because they did speak about a PICC line, and a PICC line is when they just insert that into the vein, but you have to be very careful that you don't get infections and not to get it wet, and careful in the shower. And I wanted less time to be visiting the hospital as I could, because we were then full on in the pandemic. Luckily, I didn't have to have a PICC line, they got it straight in. I then had to do injections in between, 30 injections in between my chemotherapy. I would inject myself on the Saturday morning after the Friday's lot of chemo. About an hour afterwards, that would just hit. You just feel extremely heavy. It was like dragging sacks of potatoes, really, attached to both of your legs, but I still just kept going. I would still run no matter how that my body felt, and then it would kind of dip, and I'd keep it on a calendar or I'd write down, so I knew that I'd sort of dip until about the Wednesday and then I'd start to come back up again. And I remember my friend, he was amazing to me during this, because he would sit in the garden and he treated me no differently, and that for me became so important. And he'd say to me, I don't think you have got a tumour, Pen, I think you just want to do this furlough business. And I loved that, because that would be the sort of thing that I would have said to someone, because in the darkest of situations, you've got to find humour, you really have. And humour to me is so important. So that always made me laugh. And he would say to me to write it down when I'd have the chemo, and I did continue to do that. So I knew what was coming, what to expect, and it made it feel less scary in a way. The first time I had it, I had the cold cap. Now with a cold cap, it's like going in a fridge freezer. They bring it in an hour before to get the temperature up, and then it just goes, sticks to you. And again, you're in a fridge freezer, so it's extremely cold. I didn't mind it, I got on okay with it, but you're in there longer, and then when the chemo's gone through you, they put like a saline through you first of all, and that feels quite cold. You feel that going in your veins. And my nurse Linda, I made sure she did my first lot of chemo, I made sure she did my last. I don't know why that gets me emotional, but it does. And then you're there a bit longer, and I thought, look, I just want to be in and out. I'm going to lose my hair anyway. If this is just going to go around me, just let it go all over my body. I don't care about my hair. It doesn't matter to me. I'm here. And I rang my friend and I said, I'm not having this cold cap anymore. What's the point? I don't want it. So I didn't have it. So Tina from the Hair and Skin Clinic, who's so knowledgeable on cancer patients and their hair, and if there's nothing she doesn't know about that kind of thing. So she came out to my house, and again this makes me smile, because she came out looking like a Ghostbuster, all geared up with the apron on and everything on, and with a large stick, like a poo stick, and a bag on the end of it, and it sanitised all the pair of her hairdressing scissors. And I stood at the other end of the garden, and she told me what to do. So I put my hair in bunches and I just cut away. And I put it in the fire pit, and I always remember this. And the letters that I had, it's just me. Every woman, every man is different. Every person that gets this deals with it their way. And I always say that. And I burnt my hair, and I thought to myself, by the time that comes back, I'll be a different woman. And I certainly was, and certainly am. When I'd go into to have the chemo, music became a huge thing for me. That was one of the main things that I said to people. I remember sending out a text saying, look, if there's any tunes, any songs that you absolutely love, let me know. So I created my own playlist chemo 1 and chemo 2. I must have had about 150 tracks in there because I wasn't allowed to take anyone with me. So that was difficult, but I had this music with me, so that kept me through. And music's a wonderful, wonderful thing because it transports you, it takes you away, it brings you back, it reminds you of a memory, it's there with you. And for that, I was extremely grateful. And I don't say this in an arrogant way, I really, really don't. But I had no side effects from any of the chemotherapy. But I ate incredibly well. I was very glad I could cook, that's for sure. And I had the time. I had the time all during lockdown, so I could cook breakfast, lunch and dinner every single day. So that was what I did. I had the time to train. I had the time to do, all the exercises that I wanted to. I could up my protein content when I needed to. Whatever I needed to do, I did. And that was my way. I had a say on that. No one else was going to control that. That was me. I was told that I would be having surgery at Blakelands. They weren't doing it at the main hospital, again, because of what we were going through. So I was taken to the main hospital, and then I was taken by ambulance to the Blakelands Centre. I had to have a wire wired into the side of my breast. When they do a biopsy, they almost put like a grain of rice in it. They attach a wire to either side so that they know exactly where to pinpoint and where to go in and get the tumour. I did feel that wire going in, believe you me. I remember saying to the nurse, "My God, that's like a Black & Decker going in me." My lovely surgeon was there and all these doctors, and they greeted me, and I was like all gowned up. And I thought, this is a bit strange. "Oh, hello, how are you?" "Yeah, fine, thank you." And I didn't know what to expect, and I went into this room and they'd got it laid out like a crucifixion. And I thought, oh my good Gillian, what's going on here? And I do remember this, he was a French man, and he was the anaesthetist that was going to put a jab in me and knock me out. And I said, oh, this is like, what's going on here then? And he said, well, this is the operating room. I mean, I don't know what I thought, whether I thought I was going to be wheeled down on a trolley, I don't know. I just walked in. I sat on the bed. I remember saying something vaguely about France, and then boom, I was gone. I remember coming round in the recovery room some hours later. I was kind of all packed up. They performed a lumpectomy on me because my tumour was at the side, and then I had axillary node removal, so they cut and severed through the nerves there and then remove your lymph nodes. That was probably the most painful bit, really, because you don't realise of how much you use in your arm. And I remember it being explained to me about the fact that we're going to sever through nerves, so you'll have a lot of damage there. I can feel it now slightly, but it's not the same, and I lost the feeling in my upper arm, but I was alive and I could move it. And I'd done quite a lot of boxing beforehand, and I was determined that I was going to do that. I wasn't going to lose the movement of my shoulder. And I even got up out of the bed about 40 minutes later, and I was exercising, and the nurse sort of told me off, and I said, look, I've got to keep going. But I realise now that was just my way of, I asked to go to the toilet, and she said, I'll help you. And I said, no, I'm fine, I can do it. And I remember her saying to the other nurse, oh, she's so determined, that one. And that was what I was, that was how I am, and that was how I felt. So I kind of then recuperated, rested at home. It was quite bruised and swollen, but it healed very quickly. I was then needed to go to the radiotherapy centre, the Churchill Hospital at Oxford. Now this is where this comes into play, and this is why I do this, because the radiotherapy centre that they're going to have here in Milton Keynes will make a massive, massive difference to patients, because by then I'd had enough, really. And it was an hour journey, 2-hour journey each day. I was going every day. I went for nearly a month, and I just had enough. So to have that here locally with all those facilities, that wellness centre where people can just go and have that space will be so, so appreciated, and I know that 100%. When you have the radiation, they kind of raise you about 6 foot in the air. You go on a machine, they measure you all up. I remember not being able to come into contact with anyone because I was so radioactive. And then they tattoo you. So they tattoo you either side so that they know the exact point of the laser where to go in. You have to hold your breath. They go out the room, they tell you when to breathe, they tell you when not to. And they they strap a box to your chest, and you cannot move. You have to really hold your breath, because if that moves, they've then got to start the machine again. I do remember
getting to Oxford, and this is the hardest part for me, because it was like a war zone. We were so full in the pandemic, and there was just bodies down every single corridor, and things that I saw I'll never forget, and faces that I saw. Just desperation was really hard to see. And I got in this room and I started undressing, and the tears just were rolling. And I looked at this machine and I thought, I've had enough. I've just had enough now, but I'd had to keep going, and I thought, I can't stop, I've got to keep going. You then get on the machine, they raise you up, and again, I'd be so defiant, because before the machine was raised down, I just used to jump off. The nurse used to tell me off. I used to think, well, I'm going to do it because I can. The same as, I did 3 cartwheels down the chemotherapy centre when I pulled the bell off the wall, and it was just defiant. That was really hard. I was isolated for all that time, and I'd come up to the hospital at Milton Keynes on a Friday. That was the only time I was coming in contact really with people. That was my only little trip out, was to the hospital. And then all of a sudden I saw all these patients, and the enormity, I think, of what I'd done and what I'd done so far really hit me. But I just, I kept going. And I think the one thing that became huge for me was creativity. I'd always been really creative, and that became a huge pull for me. So whether that was gardening, if I hadn't have had that space where my friend, he could have sat there with me, friends, could pop things over the fence to me, food items and what have you, I don't know what I'd have done. I used to do various styling of, hair pieces. I used to put bandanas on. I used to put different wigs on, showing of different ways that you could do it, because I didn't want women to feel, oh my God, I'm going to lose my hair, because cancer is not just about chemotherapy and losing your hair. There are so many different layers to it. Styling, I just used to style clothes, colours, anything. I could just, I seeked out whatever I could really. And throughout the whole time, I felt so lucky. And I felt if I'd got Steve with me, whenever I'd go running, I remember jumping up and down curbs. I didn't care who saw me. I'd be dancing to like Lucky Star by Madonna, and I thought, I'm so lucky. I'm being treated in a country that will treat me. I'm just so lucky. And I just felt him there with me, and that became the strength for me, that I had to, I pulled on that strength. So having a well-being space, which they will have here, is just amazing, because you need that little creative outlet. You need to have that sort of away from the main sort of hospital, or you need to have somewhere where you can just look at nature. So that will be just wonderful for patients. And then after I'd finished going to Oxford, I then just sat down and I looked at the wallpaper in my house for about 2 months, I think. That's when it really, really hit me of what I'd done. And I remember talking to one of the nurses or one of the psychologists and all about that, because where I'd lost someone so close, I knew I'd need help with that, because I was going back into that situation where I'd lost them. So I knew that coming here on my own during the lockdown was going to be difficult. And I just sat looking at this wallpaper, and then it was spoken about trauma, and it was spoken about PTSD. And I said, look, I've been to Afghanistan, I've not been to war. I'm just a normal middle-aged woman that's been through breast cancer. But I do realise now that it is a traumatic thing to go through. And then slowly, I wanted to listen to music again. And my God, when I listen to music now, and there's something in it, don't ask me what it is, but when I do, that really touches me now. And I just go crazy for dancing, and the lyrics, they just hit me more so now than ever. There are so many positives that came out of this, the people that I met, the experiences that it led for me, the opportunities it gave me. And I started writing, and I was not a writer whatsoever, because I'm very dyslexic, so that wasn't something I ever thought I would end up doing. And I just found that so easy to do. It was just almost like letting go. I wrote an ebook, I wrote various blogs about my experience with it. And I felt so supported. I felt as if I'd got a Mexican way. The people here at this hospital and at Oxford, and every single person that I came across,
I will be forever grateful and indebted to them. So that is why I do this. If this inspires someone, motivates them, helps them, gives them a little bit of a better understanding, gives them more of an insight, then that's wonderful.